Devotees of Bhagavan Sri Krishna, devotees of God, this evening again. A special thanks to all of you who have joined us. And today is a very auspicious day, as you all know. Today is when Bhagavan has descended as Purna Avatar, a complete, a full descension for many, many reasons, and he spent more than 100 years on earth. Today, briefly, we will look at Bhagavad Mahapuran, a scripture, one of the 18 Puranas, that was written by Ved Vyasji after he had written 17 Puranas and could not have been peaceful, and was very uneasy and approached by Naraji. Naraji asked him, "Why are you so uneasy? Why are you so unhappy? You have written Sanatan philosophy in 17 books." And he said, "I feel that something is missing." Naraji told him, "It's because you haven't written bhakti about Bhagavan Sri Krishna. You've only written philosophy, and in Kali Yuga, only bhakti will help the soul to go from worldly existence to peace, to happiness, to fulfillment and satisfaction in life. And those qualities would also go beyond this life with a devotee." Ved Vyasji had written philosophy, but to write in bhakti, one has to know, one has to experience bhakti. And so Ved Vyasji went and practice bhakti, learn the philosophy, practice and experience what bhakti is, what loving devotion is to God. And then he wrote Bhagavad Mahapuran. It's called Pancham Ved. It has the beauty of the glories of the existence of the Leelas of Bhagavan Sri Krishna. It is from this beautiful scripture that we'll look at the coming, the birth, the appearance, whatever you want to call the descension of God as Sri Krishna. But before we do so, when Bhagavad Mahapuran is read, just like when we read Ramayana, there's a sumiran that has to be sung or chanted. And so similarly in Bhagavad Mahapuran, there's a Bhagavad Sumiran. Many of you might know it, Riddhi Siddhi Data. If you don't, then please look at the lyrics and group your voices together. Ramayana Sumiran Jo Sumirat Siddhi Hoy Gananayaka Karivar Vadan. Bhagavad Puran has a Sumiran Riddhi Siddhi Data. So let's group our voices together as we chant Riddhi Siddhi Data, a Sumiran, before we read from Bhagavad Mahapuran. Riddhi Siddhi Data, Siddhi Sadan Varana Badana, Riddhi Siddhi Data, Siddhi Sadan Varana Badana, Sumiro Barambar, Madan Karan Ke Lal Ko, Ganapati Kripa Nidhan, Gyan Khan Anand Bhavan, Dehu Mohi Bardan, Barnav Bhasha Bhagavat, Jai Shiva Anand Kan, Bhutnath Bhav Bhaya Haran, Bhakti Vishaya Nirgan, Gaur Varan Mangal Karan, He Braj Chanda Mukund, Braj Bhushan Dushan Haran, जगदीश सेवत शेष महेश अज महिमा मित भेद 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 जानत ने देहु मोहि वरदान राधा वर यह वर सदा प्रेम बड़ी मुस्कान नित चित में खत खात है मोहि चाहिए चुनाही और वस्तु प्रभु जात की बसी रहे मन माही यह बाकी झाकी सदा लिए लकुटिया गायन के पीछे फिरत बाल बाल लिए साथ मोर मुकुट शिर पर धरे कर मुरली उर्मास शेष मुकुट कति की तपत या छवि को नंदला बसहु हृदय मम निषे दिवस गुरुपद रज धरषि कहो भागवत की कथा जो सुखदेव मुनि जो सुखदेव मुनीश कबीर परीक्षित निकति सो वृंदावन बिहारी लाल की जय। Like I said in the beginning, when we worship any form of God on a day that is more auspicious, and these days are more auspicious for a particular reason. Every day is auspicious, every day is good, every day we're lucky to be alive, every day we can make great progress towards attaining God, towards accomplishing our goals, towards making improvement in any skill, etc. But a day that is set aside in the Hindu calendar as being more auspicious from a spiritual standpoint if one worships. And listening, Shravanam, Kirtanam, all the scriptures declare unanimously that there are 9 forms of worship, and then there are 3 from that 9. And in those 3, one is called Shravanam. Shravana means to listen. And sometimes we try to put up the lyrics for something, and with the lyrics you can sing, so you'll be doing Shravanam and Kirtanam, 2 forms of bhakti. When you do those, it will help you to remember Bhagavan. When you remember Bhagavan, Bhagavad Gita says that you're able to attain him. So, today we'll read briefly from Bhagavad Mahapuran, like we said in the beginning. We'll read a katha as to what happened when Bhagavan was coming upon earth. But many of us know the katha, or you can hear it, you can read it online, something like that. But today is called Janmāsthami. Janam and Ashtami. Janam means birth. Ashtami means like how we have our birthday in a particular date. Ashtami is the 8th day in the Hindu month. So this is the birth of Bhagavan Sri Krishna on the 8th day. So when we look at the word itself, let's examine 2 points before we go into the katha and close for tonight. The first point is we say Janam. When we have our own birthdays, we say Janam as well. Janam Din Mubarak. For those of you who know Hindi, happy birthday. Or today is my Janam Din. we say Janmāsthami, also Bhagavan is born today. So if Bhagavan is born and we are born, then that means that Bhagavan and you, or Bhagavan and me, were the same. We were both born. Here's the catch though. We know that when we were born, we're not infinite beings in this human body. This body is finite. So if we're born and Bhagavan is born, then God should also be finite. God should have a particular lifespan. Isn't that so? So there are enough people who would tell you that, look, you talk about his Janam Din. Let's discuss point number 1 first. You talk about Janam Din, that God was born, you were born, so clearly he's not God because you're not God. That God is a formless aspect, a formless entity. That God pervades every atom in this universe, and so how can he be an individual? How can he be a person? That God is only Nirakar, he doesn't have any form. That this thing about God having a form has come from the saints who have propounded this in the Puranas later. That this is not in the Ved. That God is not spoken of as with a form in Ved, which is the highest authority in Sanatana Dharma. So listen on, because remember we said that listening is a form of worship as well, one of the 3 forms of worshipping. Plus we'll have knowledge to strengthen our bhakti, or in case someone tells us something that's out of line with Sanatana Dharma. So, God doesn't have a form. Ved doesn't say that God has a form. The Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, which is the Yajurved says, Dvevaya Brahmano Rupe Murtam Cha Eva Amurtam Cha. Murtam means form. Now this is Ved. Yajurved, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, 2nd canto, 3rd chapter, 1st verse. Amurtam, Murtam Cha Eva Amurtam Cha. Murtam means form, Amurtam means formless. What does it mean? It means that Ved is saying that God has both form and formless, or both are correct. So anyone who says that God can only have a form, that's incorrect. And anyone who says that God can only be formless, that's incorrect. Here Ved is saying. It is also written in Yajurveda in another place. You know the Purusha Suktam, many people read it. Sahastasera ka puruka. There's one verse in Purusha Suktam which comes from Yajurveda. It says, Ajayamano bahuda vijayate. Ajayamano bahuda vijayate. Tasya dhiraha parijananti yonim. That God has taken Ajayamano bahuda vijayate. That God has taken countless forms, countless births. This is Ved is saying this. Vishnu Puran says the same thing. Murtam chaiva murtam cha dve eva brahmano rupe. Vishnu Puran said, Murtam chaiva amurtam cha. God has both form and he can be formless. And he can have a form whenever he wants. Yajurved, again. Nila griva sruti kante. Yajur Nila griva shruti kante. Shruti means the throat. Shruti kante is talking about Nila Griva, the blue throat one. And who's that? We all know that Bhagavan Shankar is described as the blue throat one. Right in Yajurved, in chapter 16, verse 41, there's a very popular mantra there that says, Om Namah Shambhavaya Cha Mayo Bhavaya Cha Namaskaraya Cha Mayaskaraya Cha Namah Shivaya Cha Shivataraya Cha Om Namah Shivaya. The Ved here, Yajurved, 16th chapter, verse 41 is talking about Bhagavan Shankar. Bhagavan Shankar has a form. You know, Adi Shankaracharya, for those of us who have, those people who have studied Advaita philosophy. Advaita means God only, and there's no two, there's only one. This is what Shankaracharya came to preach. Both in his writings, Dvividam Brahm. Dvividam means two. Brahm means God. Shankaracharya himself has accepted God as having two forms. Not only two forms, listen to what Ved says. Yajurved, verse 3, chapter 4. Tam Sri Pumanasi, Tam Kumar Utava Kumari, Tam Jirno Dandena Vanchasi, Tam Jato Bhavasi, Vishwato Mukha. Tam Stri means a woman. Tam Puman, a man. Tam Kumar means a young man. Dandena Vanchasi, that the person who walks with a stick. God has the form of a young man, of a young woman, of an older woman, of a man, or even an old man with a stick. Ved is saying this. For those of us who think, or may have heard that Ved doesn't say anything about God having a form. These are all Ved mantras that we have quoted today. Just to make this first point, because Ramayana tells us, Hari Ananta Hari Kathananta Kahi Sunahi Bahubidhi Sab Santa. God is infinite. And so are his stories. His stories are infinite. The forms that he can take are infinite. The names he has are infinite. The word infinite is synonymous with God. If he's not infinite, he's not God. If he's God, he's omnipotent. He's all-powerful. And if he's all-powerful, then he can take a form if he wants to, and he can be formless if he wants to. That's only logical, right? So that's a little bit of information, just in case you are faced or will face with this question at any point in time. One more point before we go into Bhagavad Mahapuran to do a brief katha tonight. If you meet a critic of Sanatana Dharma, or someone who's studying, really closely studying Sanatana Dharma and studying our scriptures, if someone meets you in the train, I actually know of someone who was in a train in New York City and approached by a priest of another religion who studies Hinduism. This can be from Hindus, it can be from other people. This has nothing to do with the priest. This is something that people will do. They'd approach you. Hi, are you a Hindu? Yes. What is your favorite form of God? Oh, I pray to Krishna, I pray to Ram, I pray to Shiva, etc. And then they'll tell you, well, you shouldn't be doing that. You know why? Because your God is dead. Yep, they'll tell you your God is dead. There are enough people who say that about God with a form in Hinduism. So if someone tells you, or your child, that your God is dead, what is it you'll say? How would you make the point that, no, I'm not praying to a dead God? If God is dead, he's never been God to begin with. And they'll tell you, what I'm telling you is true because I can prove it to you. How would you prove it? I can prove it from the scriptures. Oh, well, maybe your scripture is bashing mine. No. I can prove it to you from your scripture. What? My scripture? Yes. Which one? Bhagavad Gita. Isn't that your main scripture? Yes. And they tell you, Jatasya hi dhruvo mrityu dhruvam janma mritasya cha tasmad aparyarharthe natam sochutmi harhasi. Jatasya hi dhruvo mrityu. That as long as a person is born, that person has to die. This is inevitable. Nobody can change that. So when you say Janmāsthami, when you say Janam, you celebrate your birthday because you were born, inevitably you would leave this body in the same way that your God was born and he too will die. And if you don't believe me, Bhagavad Gita, the same form of God, this Krishna that you're talking about, he has written this in his own scripture. that as long as you are born, you have to die. And so Krishna was born. Today we're celebrating his birth, and so he'll die. And that's why I'm telling you, your God is dead. Oh, what would we do? Bahuni me vyatitani janmani tavacharjuna tanyahang deva sarvani natam veta parantapa. Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavan, this is Bhagavad Gita, verse 5, chapter 4. Sri Krishna is saying that he's telling Arjuna that both you and I have had many births, Arjuna. Many births? Okay, what does that mean? Sri Krishna is telling Arjuna that I have had many births. If you've had many births, it means that you have died before, and you probably reincarnated. That makes sense according to this verse. And so you're puzzled. You're puzzled, why? Because this person is quoting the scriptures to you. That as long as you come from the stomach of the mother, you're not free. As long as you've come from there, you go around in Mrityu Sansara Sagarat, you go and come, go and come, go and come. Same thing with your God. Because he has come from the stomach of Devaki or of Kaushalya. And so once you come from the stomach of the mother, you're subject to what every other human being goes through. Because the great saints of yore, they've said the same thing. Let's examine the words of what the saints said in the past. Bhaj Govindam, Bhaj Govindam, Govindam Bhaj Mudhamate, Bhaj Govindam, Bhaj Govindam, Govindam Bhaj Mudhamate. संप्राप्ते ही सनहित काले नहीं नहीं रक्षक दुक्रिं करने भज गोविंदम गोविंदम भज मूढ़मते पुनरपि जननम पुनरपि मरणम पुनरपि जननी जठरे शयनम पुनरपि जननम पुनरपि मननम पुनरपि जननी जठरे शयनम इह संसारे बहुदुस्तारे कृपया पारे पाहि मुरारे भज गोविंदम गोविंदम भज मूढ़मते भज गोविंदम गोविंदम भज मूढ़मते गोविंदम भज मूढ़मते गोविंदम भज मूढ़मते। वृंदावन बिहारी लाल की जय। So Bhaja Govindam, there's a verse, the 24th verse, Punarapi Jananam, Punarapi Maranam, Punarapi Janani, Jathare Shayanam. Punarapi Jananam means that all the time we take, but this is Adi Shankaracharya, the first Jagat Guru in this age, is saying, Punarapi Maranam, we're born, we die, we're born, we die. And this is what we're saying about our God. If your God, if your Krishna was born today, then he too will die. This is what the saints are saying. And all the scriptures say the same thing. Bhagavad Gita, Ved, everything. Punarapi Janani Jathare Shayanam. That as long as a Janani, as long as you have come from the womb of the mother, then you're subject to perish. So this is a very strong point people can make to us. And we should be equipped. You know, arguing about God is the worst thing and the most useless thing anybody can do. However, it is of paramount importance that we have knowledge, scriptural knowledge. In that way, not because we want to argue with people, but in that way our bhakti will be stronger. If someone tells you this and you have no answer, you don't have the explanation of the knowledge, you would lose faith in God. It's very simple. You'll become an atheist, or you'll do something else in the name of spirituality. Why? Because you don't have what it takes to understand. Shvetashvar Upanishad, the first chapter, 9th verse. Gyāgyau dāvajavīshani shāvaja heko bhoktri bhogyartha mukta. Shvetashvar Upanishad. Both God and the individual soul, this verse is saying, this is Ved, is saying both God and the individual soul are what? Birthless. They don't have any birth. What? But we're celebrating God's birth today. And we were born, so how come we don't have any birth? This human coil has had a birth. However, the spirit that's within us has had no birth. It's eternal. It's imperishable. So the way to understand the word Janma, Janma is Jani Pradurbhave. What does Jani Pradurbhave? It means Pragat Hona. What does that mean in English? It means to be revealed. Pragat Hona means to reveal. So God, when we break the word down, Janma, remember, Jani Pradurbhave means Pragat, which means in English to be revealed. So God is revealed. And so is the soul that makes us speak and listen today. That his soul was revealed in the body, he wasn't born. It was revealed from wherever it was. That Bhagavan has chosen a particular body to put the soul in it. So the soul was revealed and God is revealed. And we'll learn that in our little katha we'll be doing today. So the soul is revealed in the mother and the body is created by the mother. So that helps us to come closer to an understanding, because Devaki, the mother of Bhagavan Sri Krishna, and Kaushalya, the mother of Bhagavan Sri Ram, they all experienced symptoms of pregnancy. When Kaushalya was carrying Bhagavan Sri Ram, so to speak, and Devaki was carrying Bhagavan Sri Krishna, they experienced all signs and all the things that happens to a regular mother when she's carrying a baby. Mothers know what it is. They both experience all of those things. So how come did they experience this? And we keep saying that God was revealed, he wasn't born. The queens could have been seen carrying a baby. The stomach was growing higher and higher, and you can see that there's a baby in there from the outside. Outside meaning you can see the stomach getting bigger. So what was that? If your God wasn't born and he was revealed, what was that in the stomach? Brahma Vaivarta Puran tells us, Garbhe Chavayuna Purne Niralipto Bhagavan Swayam. Garbhe, in the stomach of the mother of Devaki and of Kaushalya, Vayuna Purne. Vayu means what? Air. So in the stomachs of these mothers that were said to have been carrying God in a human form, this was Bhagavan's Yog Maya Shakti, his divine power. God uses his power, Yog Maya Shakti. You know the same Shakti that we talked about when Bhagavan was born, we'll get there. And when Kans was trying to kill that 8th child that he thought has come to destroy him, we remember the katha when he was swinging a little child in the air and the child got released from his hands and flew up into the air. It was a female form, you remember that, right? That female form was Durga, and that's one of the names of Yog Maya Shakti, Durga. It is this power that Bhagavan has used to add vayu, vayu meaning air, into the stomach, and gave the mothers the feeling so that they can have the enjoyment of carrying a child. But according to our scriptures, that there was air there in the stomach of the mothers, and so they were not carrying a fetus in there. Because Bhagavad Gita helps us to understand, Janma karma cha me divyam yo veti tattvataha tyakta deham punarjanma naiti mameti sorjuna. Bhagavan is saying to Arjun that, hey Arjun, there's one word in the Bhagavad Gita that describes the difference between my birth and yours. The birth of a human being, as we loosely call it, and Bhagavan. What is that difference? Janma karma chame divyam. Divyam means divine. And so, the 4th chapter, the 9th verse of Bhagavad Gita is saying that those who understand, Arjun, Bhagavan is those who understand the divine nature of my birth, they will attain me. Bhagavan has not only explained this to Arjun, he has also assured Arjun that any person who understands this truth would attain me. Why would you attain God if you just understand that? Because now you'll be in a position to not only understand but to accept that God is divine, and that was a leela. Bhagavan performed a leela. A leela is what? A divine pastimes. The reason why we don't accept it, and if you don't accept it, we will not be blessed by the divine Lord, is because when leelas are performed, see, leelas are not performed by God for intellectual analysis. That's what we all do as human beings, whether we've never gone to school or whether we have 4 PhDs, we try to analyze the scriptures with our intellect. The scriptures were not written by a person's intellect. That is why, regardless of how smart you are, we would not be able to understand the scriptures. Why? Khagajane kagahi karabhaka. In the same way that the bird only understands the language of a bird, only a saint. A God-realized soul understands the language of a God-realized soul. So when we read the scriptures and we try to analyze with our intellect, we'll come up with a wrong conclusion. Furthermore, this analysis of the scripture will lead to spiritual paralysis. Many times we hear, too much analysis leads to paralysis. Well, this is one of the times when it would apply. But what is worse yet is this will lead to spiritual paralysis. And then our spiritual growth comes to an end. Why? Because the intellect cannot comprehend that which is divine. We just have to read the scripture and trust that this is Bhagavan's words and he knows. One more difference before we go into katha of how God is divine and the soul is divine, but we as a human being, we're divine beings with a human experience, but not to the extent of God. Because God is Sarvagya, all-knowing, and we're Alpagya. We don't know, according to the scriptures. There's a beautiful verse that tells us, Shama Shama Nama Rup Leela Gunadham Bhati Rahe Prem Nishkam Binudham. It says, Nama Rupa Leela Gunadham. There are 6 things that are synonymous with God. 6 things, and God is the same thing. 6 things and God is the same thing? Yep, according to the scriptures. Leela. Remember we talked about Leela? His divine pastimes. If you remember the coming of Bhagavan, and we remember that he came and he was not in the womb and he came as a little baby and things like that, the thought, remembering those Leelas, those pastimes, those Leelas are synonymous with God, and it is as good as remembering God. Leela Guna Dham. Dham means, Gun means his virtues. Nam is his name, God's name. God has all his powers infused in his name. That's why we say Ram se bada Ram ka naam. That his name is as powerful as himself. Roop, his form. Well, we accept that. Form of Sri Krishna, Sri Ram, etc. Gun, his virtues, his qualities are also divine. So if we try to emulate his qualities, we would be emulating and inculcating divine qualities and traits into our everyday lives. Leela, his pastimes that we talked about before. Nam, Rupa, Leela, Guna, Dham. Dham means his divine abode. You know, many people want to go to a tirth. You know, we say tirat or tirth. We want to go to India, we want to go to Govardhan, we want to go to Rameshwar, we want to go to Varanasi to see Bhagavan Shankar and the Ganga. These are all tirthas. These places, according to these 6 things, these places, a dham, when you go to Vrindavan, when you go to the house of Sri Krishna or you go to Nandagaon, this is Bhagavan's dham. Or Gokul is his dham. Golok is his dham. His dham and Bhagavan are one and the same. And the last one is what? Sant. Nam, Roop, Leela, Gun, Dham, Sant. His saints. Saints meaning not everybody is a saint, right? You see a person in yellow clothing or saffron clothing, maybe with a long beard, long hair. Oh, that's a saint. No. Not that easy. He can be, but you'll have to find out. And the way to find out, there's no machine to test him. You'd have to be associated or find out from other people, and don't end up with a con person and call him a saint. You have to meet a genuine saint. Because a saint and God and the other 5 things are one and the same. So they all reside in each other. So these are not material things. These things are divine. And what is divine? Divine means that which is not material. So those are 2 little points for us to remember so that we can make our philosophy stronger and our bhakti will grow. Only when we understand and we cannot be pushed around by people who don't know that we'll have unflinching faith. So now the question is asked, okay, I understand that God has come. He has come as Krishna, but we know God as Ram, we know God as Durga, as Shivji, etc. So who is this Krishna? So let's use the next 2 minutes to discuss from Ved, Atharva Ved. Who's Krishna? Not only Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavad Mahapuran talks about Krishna, but Atharva Ved, verse 2. Right in the beginning of Atharva Ved, Gopal Tapani Upanishad, the question is asked, Kaha Paramo Deva, who's the supreme power, the supreme Brahm, God, above whom there is none? Above whom there is none. That is the question the Ved is asking. Kutau Mrityor Vibheti. Who is that? Who is that one? Who even death is afraid of? You know, human beings are afraid of death, right? We shouldn't be. If our philosophy is strong, we wouldn't be. Why? Because there's nothing we can do about it. We should see the body as an opportunity. So, kuto mrityur vibheti, that who is it that even death is afraid of? The answer, the questions continue. Kasya vijnanena khilam vijnatam bhavati. Who is that person? By knowing whom all knowledge is attained. When we want to know anything about God, about the scriptures, about life, what is the one thing we can do and will know everything? Kasya vijnanena khalidam vigyatam bhavati. Who is that person by knowing whom all knowledge is attained? The answer comes in this same paragraph in Ved. It says, Krishna vai paramam daivatam. Bhagavan Sri Krishna, remember the first question? Who is that supreme Lord above whom there is none? The answer here is Krishna vai paramam daivatam. Bhagavan Sri Krishna is that supreme Lord that you're asking for. Govinda mrityur vibheti. He's so terrifying, or he can be so terrifying, that even death is afraid of him. To answer the other question, Gopi jannalavabhyanena tadvidkyatam bhavati. By knowing Sri Krishna, the beloved of the gopis, all knowledge is attained. So this is what scriptures are saying, this is what Ved is saying. And to enhance our understanding a little bit more, who is Bhagavan Sri Krishna, verse 48 of Brahma Samhita tells us, Yasyai kanishvasita kalam athava labham jivanti loba bilaja jagat andanata. That Brahmaji here is saying that I worship that Lord, that this God that we hear about Vishnu Bhagwan, then we hear about Mahavishnu. You know, every star, every earth planet has a Vishnu. Brahma, Vishnu and Mahesh. But there's one Mahavishnu. Only one. This Mahavishnu, when he breathes in, the whole universe is destroyed, and he breathes out, and there's a manifestation of uncountable solar system. This Mahavishnu, Brahmaji is saying that I worship Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami. Brahmaji is saying I worship that Govinda to whom or for whom or by whom Mahavishnu is created. And Mahavishnu is a partial manifestation of the Govinda. This is the Govinda that I'm worshipping. Now if you follow Hinduism, you might know it a little bit differently. That's okay. I'm not here to tell you to change your beliefs. It'll be silly for me to do that. Only you can change your belief system, not me. But this is information for you that Bhagavan Sri Krishna is Supreme God, then there's Mahavishnu, and then comes Brahma, Vishnu and Mahesh in every universe. We've known it differently, but that's fine. This is information for you. Sri Krishna, Rudranam Shankarascha Bitesho Yaksha Rakshasam. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 10. Verse 23, Bhagavan Sri Krishna says, among the Rudras, there are 11 Rudras, of which Bhagavan Shankar is one. Among the Rudras, I am Shankar. Rudranam Shankarascha. He's saying here that he's Shiva. In chapter 10, Bhagavan Sri Krishna is very elaborate as to who he is. Brahma Samhita, chapter 5, verse 45. What does it say? Ramadimurteshu kalaniyamena tishtan. Rama Adimurteshu. Brahmaji again here is saying that I worship that Govinda, Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami. That I worship that Govinda who's Ram. Ram Adimurteshu is not only Ram, but these Adi Murteshu, all the other forms of God that you see, Nrsimha, Bhagwan, Vaman, etc., all the Dash Avatar, or the 24 avatars, Bhagwan, here, Brahma is saying that I worship that Sri Krishna, who is both Ram and all the other forms of God that we see. So my dear brothers and sisters, devotees of Bhagwan Sri Krishna, if you had these little doubts in your mind, I'm grateful for you having listened for the last few minutes so that we can get rid of this doubt and our bhakti can become stronger. That is why it is said in Bhagavad Mahapuran, this is what it says in Bhagavad. Sri Krishna Govinda Hare Murari He Nath Narayan Vasudeva Sri Krishna Govinda Hare Murari He Nath Narayan Vasudeva 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 Yata tanor mool nishechanena Tripyanti tat skandabujopashaka Pranopahara sayatendriyanam Tataiva sarvanamuchyuteja Sri Krishna Govinda Hare Murari He Nath Narayan Vasudeva He Nath Narayan Vasudeva He Nath Narayan Vasudeva. Bhagavad Mahapuran, 14th verse of the 31st chapter, the 4th canto of Bhagavad Mahapuran is saying that in the same way, when we eat food, we eat food, we eat dal, we eat bhat, we eat baingan, we eat okra, whatever we eat, right? The body needs so many things to survive. We need, this food that we eat, it has to go to produce many things. Cells, flesh, blood, marrow, etc., etc. Many things. Different vitamins that we don't even know their names. The body has to produce them. But what do? Do we take one thing for flesh, one for blood, one for marrow, one for vitamin D, one? We take some multivitamin, but that's just because we're not eating correctly. We need some support. We're not eating a staple diet. If we eat a staple diet, we should be okay. This is not a discouragement from taking multivitamins, though. Continue. But my point is, in the same way that you eat food and then the body takes care of all these different things that is required, in the same way Bhagavad Mahapuran is saying, Taro, yata tarora mool, taro means a tree, mool means the root. Nisichanena, that when we water the root of the tree, what happens? When we're watering our flower tree, or our vegetable or tomato that we have, we just pour the water on the root, right? We don't pour the water in every leaf and try to inject some water into the stem and etc. We just pour the water in the fruit, on the root, and the root takes care of the entire tree. The tree blossoms, it gives flowers, it gives fruits, only by pouring the water on the root. In the same way, Bhagavad Mahapuran is saying that when one worships Bhagavan Sri Krishna, then it is worshipping all other forms of God. Now, this might not sit very well with everyone, but sometimes, sometimes we just have to take what the scriptures say. Like we said, we cannot measure the scripture by our material intellect because the scripture is divine. And sometimes I too have the need to say that don't shoot the messenger. This is Bhagavad Mahapuran. This is not my idea. It's coming from the 4th chapter, 34th verse, 31st chapter rather, 4th canto, and this is the 14th verse. So you can go check it out. If you worship Bhagavan Sri Krishna and you're worshipping all other forms of God, we have laid that example before. We use this verse, and this is why this verse is a pouring water in the root of a tree. It energizes the trunk. It energizes the branches, supplying food to the stomach. It enlivens or enlivens all the senses and all the limbs in the entire body. So similarly, simply worshipping Achyuta, here is saying through devotional service, automatically satisfies all forms of God. Why? Because we're worshipping Supreme Personality. How is he Supreme Personality? Because we just quoted from Ved that says that Bhagavan is Supreme Personality. So we've talked a little bit philosophy this afternoon, and I hope that you will remember it, and so it will make your bhakti stronger. We're here to discuss the coming of Bhagavan Sri Krishna in a brief way. And so at this point in time, we will move to the 10th canto, the first chapter, and we'll start at the 18th verse. We have chosen about 3 or 4 verses only that encapsulates the entire Janma. So if you can sing along, please do. If you can't, just listen and keep the mind on Bhagavan. We look at the words of Bhagavad Mahapuran. Bala Mukunda Jai Nandalala Krishna Kanhaiya Jai Gopala. Bala Mukunda Jai Nandalala Krishna Kanhaiya Jai Gopala. Jai Gopala Jai Gopala Krishna Kanhaiya Jai Gopala. Jai Gopala Jai Gopala Krishna Kanhaiya Jai Gopala. Bala Mukunda Jai Nandalala Krishna Kanhaiya Jai Gopala. Krishna Kanhaiya Jai Gopala. Gaura Bhurva Srumuki Kinna Krandanti Karunam Vibho Upastitantike Tasmai Vyasanam Samavochata. Gaura Bhurvasati Kinna Krindanti Karunam Vibho Upastitantike Tasmai Vyasanam Samavochata. Vyasanam Samavochata. Bala Mukunda Jai Nandalala Krishna Kanhaiya Jai Gopala. Bala Mukunda Jai Nandalala Krishna Kanhaiya Jai Gopala. Jai Gopala Jai Gopala Krishna Kanhaiya Jai Gopala. Jai Gopala Jai Gopala Krishna Kanhaiya Jai Gopala. Krishna Kanhaiya Jai Gopala. Krishna Kanhaiya Jai Gopala. Kanhaiya Lal Ki Jai. So we know the story to an extent. The coming of Bhagavan Sri Krishna is told in a story form. So we'll skip that, the details of the story. We know that Kans, the demonic king, had imprisoned his own father to take away his kingdom. His father was Ugrasen, and because his father was a pious person and doing things right, Kans wanted to do what he was made happy with. And so he imprisoned his father, so he cannot be king anymore, and he became king. So Kans became king, and his sister was getting married, and Kans wanted to take the honor of transporting his sister together with his new brother-in-law, Banoi, in what is called the Barat, right? We call it Bariat. It's Barat. Many of us know that, some of us may not. So Kans is going in the Barat, and he heard a voice from above, Akash Vani as we say, that, hey Kans, you're being foolish. That the 8th child of this couple that you're rejoicing and carrying them will be the reason for your destruction. Why did this happen according to this verse? This is the first chapter, the 18th verse of the 10th canto. It's because Kans was such a demonic king that even Mother Earth, who in the same way that she complained in Ramayana when Bhagavan Sri Ram came, that the rivers and the mountains are not as heavy and burdensome to her as the tyranny that was executed by Kans. And so with tears in her eyes, what did she do? She appeared before Brahmaji, Brahma the creator, and told him about her misfortune. Brahmaji listened about what Kans is doing, and he realized. Now in the other verse, in the 19th verse, it says here according to Bhagavad Mahapuran that after Brahmaji has listened and heard the distress of Mother Earth, he realized that this is not within his power to fix this problem. So together with Mother Earth, Brahmaji went now to Bhagavan Shankar, Shivaji. This according to the 19th verse, the other verse. And now Shivaji, having listened, they all now approach the Kshir Sagar. They approach the ocean of milk. Why? Because this is where Bhagavan Vishnu resides, on Sheshnag, and Mahalakshmi by his feet. Right? You've seen that picture before. So they approach the Kshir Sagar. They have said what they came for, together with Mother Earth, the personification of Earth. And Brahmaji heard the voice, the instructions. In the 21st verse, in the same chapter, Brahmaji heard the instructions from Bhagavan Vishnu. It came as a vibration from in the sky, and it was received by Brahmaji. And so he got all the instructions, and now Brahmaji was to execute those instructions that he got. So what was the first thing he did? He was told that all the devatas, the devatas are celestial beings. Devatas are evolved human beings, right? Indradev, the god of rain, or the devata of rain, Vayu, of wind, Agni, the god of fire, etc. These are devatas. These are celestial beings with a lifespan. They live in the heavenly regions. And so all those devatas were instructed to appear on earth as sons and as grandsons in the family of the Yadus. In the days of Bhagavan Sri Ram, they came in the family of Bhagavan Sri Ram. Here they came as the Yadus, in the family of Bhagavan Sri Krishna. And so all the devatas, they came upon earth, and we examine from Bhagavad Mahapuran what happens next. Bhaju Giridhar Govinda Gopala, Bhaju Giridhar Govinda Gopala, Bhaju Mora Mukut Bansi Wala, Bhaju Mora Mukut Bansi Wala, Bhajanat Varna Dhar Nandlala, Bhajanat Varna Dhar Nandlala, Bhaju Giridhar Govinda Gopala, Gopala, Gopala. Nishite Tamoudhute Jayamane Janardane Devakyam Devarupinyam Vishnum Sarvaguhachaya Bhaju Giridhar Govinda Gopala, Bhaju Giridhar Govinda Gopala, Bhaju Giridhar Govinda Gopala. Kanhayalal ki jai. This is still the 10th canto. This is the 3rd chapter. However, we move from the 1st chapter just to make the katha small. This is the 3rd chapter and the 7th verse. Nishichete tamodbhute jayamane janardane. That this Bhagavan Vishnu, he's told that he sits in the core of everyone's heart. And so this Bhagavan Vishnu, this Sri Krishna, remember we talked in before, right? We're addressing here, the verse is saying Bhagavan Vishnu. We know who's Bhagavan Vishnu if we've been listening from the beginning. We know there is Supreme God, Sri Krishna, then Mahavishnu, then Brahma, Vishnu, and Mahesh. So this Vishnu, who sits in our hearts, when Kans was carrying out this tyranny, then there had to be a solution, and the solution was Bhagavan has decided to come upon earth in the form of a man through parents, through Devaki and Vasudeva. So as we know the story that Devaki and Vasudeva were now imprisoned, since Kans heard of the fact that the 8th child would cause his destruction, he imprisoned his own sister and brother-in-law so that he can have control of the children and they cannot, escape anywhere so that Kans will live in doubt. So he imprisoned them, and it was time, all the children were born. We're saying the story part and, assuming that most people know the story. If you watch the show a few days ago, you'll know there was a good synopsis of the coming of Bhagavan Sri Krishna. So here, the children were born, 6 children were born. Kans was successful in destroying those children. The 7th child was born. The 7th child, as we know, through Yogmaya Shakti, again, the power of Bhagavan, the 7th child was taken from that prison across the Yamuna into Gokul, where there was Rohini there. And so this child was exchanged there. The child was put there in Gokul, and his name was Balaram. So Balaram was the 7th child, and medical people who read the Katha today, they're referring to this as a fetal transplant. That this is the first fetal transplant they've heard of in this has happened more than 5,000 years ago. Well, clearly I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going there. I'm giving you from what the scriptures say, that this baby was taken from Devaki and was put there in Gokul, and you can call it a fetal transplant if you want, but he was put there, and this was Balaram, the older brother of Bhagavan Sri Krishna. Someone was telling me a story today of why Balaram came as the older brother of Sri Krishna. Because if you remember, the same Sheshnag, who's Balaram, he came with Bhagavan Sri Ram as Lakshman. So he was the younger brother. And Lakshman was very dedicated to seva, to his older brother. When his older brother Sri Ram is resting at night, Lakshman will anoint his feet and make him comfortable and things like that. And Bhagavan Sri Ram will tell Lakshman, it's time, you should go to bed now, they're living in the forest. Lakshman will refuse. When Bhagavan Sri Ram sees that Lakshman is refusing, it is already late, he needs to sleep, then Bhagavan Sri Ram will use his big brother authority. He'll say, Lakshman, I am the older brother, so you have to listen to what I'm saying. This is an instruction, Lakshman, go to bed. So Lakshman wants to take care of his brother before he wants to ensure he's sleeping, but then he's not able to because he's now received an instruction. Lakshman will tell Bhagavan Sri Ram always, okay. In Guyana, in the West Indies, we use a term, we say, oh, so you think you're big and bad, right? So Lakshman was saying, not in those words, but the similar sentiment. That, okay, you have power, but mark my words, next time around, I'll come as the big brother, so you'll have to listen to me. So this is why, Balaram has come, Sheshanag has come as Balaram, the older brother of Sri Krishna. So this was the 7th child. So the 7th child was taken care of, and now it was time for the 8th child. It was time for Bhagavan Sri Krishna as Purna Avatar to come into the world. It was time for him to come as a little baby. But did he? Did he come as a little baby? Let's find out what Bhagavad Mahapuran says. Narayan Karunamay Sharanam Narayan Karunamay Sharanam Jai Lakshmi Pati Vishnu Sharanam Narayan Karunamay Sharanam Jai Lakshmi Pati Paramapita Parameshwar Sharanam 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 Narayana Karunamay Sharanam Jai Lakshmi Pati Vishnu Sharanam Tamadbhutam Balakabhujam Chaturbhujam Shankagadadudaayudam Srivatsalakshanam Galashobhikaustubham Pitambaram Sandapayodasaumbhagam Narayana Karunamay Pati Vishnu Sharanam Narayan Karunamay Sharanam Jai 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 Lakshmi Pati Sharanam Jai 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 Parameshwar Sharanam Narayan Karunamay Sharanam Narayan Karunamay It was time for Bhagavan Shri Krishna to come into the world, and so Tamadbhutam Balakabhujeng Kshanam Chaturbhujam Shanka Chakra Gada. Bhagavan appeared. Bhagavan appeared, but not in the form of a baby. He appeared as Chaturbhuj. What does Chaturbhuj means? This huge Bhagavan with 4 arms, with Shankh and Chakra, Gada and Padma. He had Banmala. Sri Vatsalaksham. Sri Vats means Mahalakshmi. That Mahalakshmi was printed on the left side of his chest. Sri Vatsalaksham. Galashobi Kaustubham. He was wearing the beautiful Kaustubham. You know the Kaustubham, that jewelry, that beautiful necklace, that jewelry that came from the churning of the ocean. You remember that Katha, the churning? The Samudra Manthan, the same churning where Mahalakshmi and the universal doctor and the Hal Koot, the poison came out from churning of the ocean. At the same time, when the ocean was being churned by the Rakshas and Devatas, Kaustubham came out also. This priceless jewelry. So this Bhagavan that appeared in front of Devaki is huge. He's 6 feet tall. And he's wearing all these things, and he's carrying weapons, and he's standing in front of Devaki. Devaki is looking very carefully. Vasudeva is there. Bhagavan is dressed. Pitambaram, the last line says. He's dressed in yellow. He has all these weapons. He's decorated nicely. And Devaki is looking, I'm supposed to have a little baby. But this is huge Bhagavan. Devaki, because she was one of the greatest devotees in the past, recognized Bhagavan. Recognized that this is God in all His glory. This is a transcendental form of God. And so Bhagavan was now speaking to Devaki. He was speaking to Vasudeva. And this same verse is explained very beautifully in a language that we all actually appreciate a little bit more. This katha is also in Ramayana, and when we read Ramayana katha, then the language is easier to understand. So many people will choose. But if we examine the verse here in Bhagavad Mahapurana, what is written in Ramayana is the same exact thing. These were the words of Kaushalya, the same words of Devaki to this big 6-foot-tall, blue in complexion, carrying weapons. And Devaki is expecting a little baby that she can play with. And all of a sudden, the radiance of this Bhagavan has filled the room with brightness, and Devaki, while she has recognized God, she's now thinking, Bhai Pragata Kripala Dina Dayala Kausalya Hit Bhai Pragat Kripala Deen Dayala Kausalya Hitakari. Kausalya is saying that you've appeared in front of me in this really huge form as Bhagavan. However, Harshit Mahatari Muni Manhari Adbhyut Rupa Vichari. Kaushalya now is saying to Bhagavan that, look, I have recognized this form. This is what Devaki is saying as well. I've listened to your instructions. I understand it all. You have come. Adbhyut. This is a wonderful form. I have recognized this form. But I know that this dark complexion, I know these huge eyes. Lochana Bhirama, Lochana Bhirama, Tanughana Shama, Nijayudhya Bhujachari. Ayudha Bhujachari, you remember the Chaturbhuj, same thing, 4 arms. Bhushan Banmala Nayana Vishala Sobha Sindhu Kharari, that is adorned with jewels, etc. So Kaushalya Maya is saying the same thing, and Devaki is saying the same thing. Bhagavad Mahapurana helps us to understand what is it they're saying to Bhagavan. Bhagavan has given them all the instructions, but he's standing there as Chaturbhuj, as transcendental Lord, and so they decided to speak to him. This is what Devaki is saying to this beautiful form of God. Radha Ramana, Radha Ramana, Gopi Jana Jivana, Radha Ramana, Radha Ramana, Radha Ramana, Gopi Jana Jivana, Radha Ramana, Radha Ramana, Radha Ramana, Gopi Jana Jivana, Radha Ramana. चतुर्भुजं राधा रमणा राधा रमणा राधा रमणा गोपी जन जीवना राधा रमणा राधा रमणा Form of Bhagwan, this transcendental form, she recognized him, but then after receiving instructions from this Bhagwan, she realized that, hold on, the tapasya that I did in my last life, the promise I got was that God will come as a baby. He will come as my baby. And now I've gone through all the sacrifice. God has appeared, but in this huge Chaturbhuj form, 6 feet tall. No 6 feet tall person can fit in the stomach of the mother. So that's one more proof, piece of proof based on what we talked about before, that there was no fetus. There was nothing, no physical entity in the stomach of the mother, and we discussed that. This is another proof. 6 feet tall, with weapons, cannot come from the mother's stomach. We all know that. So again, Devaki is addressing Bhagavan, and she's saying the same thing that Kaushilya has said to Bhagavan. The Bhagavan that came and Kaushilya was expecting Bhagavan Sri Ram look exactly like this one. The same exact Bhagavan that has come to Devaki. And Kaushilya was now speaking. This is what Kaushilya said. This is a language we understand better. Mata Puni Boli. Mata Puni Boli means the mother is now speaking. Devaki has remembered, oh, I'm supposed to be a mother, so now I'll use my authority as a mother. And she is speaking like a mother. Somati Doli Tajahutat Yaharupa. Mata Puni Boli Somati Doli Tajahutat Yaharupa. Boli means speak, as we know. Tajahu tat yaharupa. Tat here means this huge form, this transcendental form. This roop, this form with 4 arms, blue in complexion, 6 feet tall. No. This was not the arrangement. She's speaking very kindly and politely to Bhagavan. This was not the arrangement. What is she saying? Ki jai Shishu Leela Ati Priya Sheela Yah Sukh Paramanupa. Ki jai Shishu Leela Ati Priya Sheela Yah Sukh Param Anupa. That you know what, dear Bhagavan, this is what I need you to do. Ki jai Shishu Leela. You know, Shishu means baby. Leela means the actions of a baby. Ati Priya Sheela. Sheela means, you know when babies run, they try to run away from the mother and they fall and they get up again and the mother can hear the gunguru on the anklets and she's enjoying this and she wants the baby to run and fall. Devaki is imagining all of this in her head and she's thinking, this is what I need. This is what I signed up for. Yahasukha Parama Anupa. Parama Anupa means that incomparable love. That incomparable and extreme happiness that is experienced by a mother when that mother has a little baby, when that mother has a little child. That is the experience I want to have, O Bhagavan. This is what I prayed for, and this is what I want. So Bhagavan says, Suni bachana sujana Rodhan thana Hoi balak sur bhupa. Harshit mahatari Muni manahari Adbud rupa vichari. Group of voices together. This is a popular piece. Before we close, let us sing like Devaki as we ask the same Bhagavan, this huge form of Bhagavan that pervades every particle of this world to come and live in our hearts as well. We ask Bhagavan, Bhai Pragat Kripala Deen Dayala Kaushilya Hitkari. Bhai Pragat Kripala Deen Dayala Kaushilya Hitkari. Harshit Mahatari Muni Manhari Advyut Rupa Vichari. Lochana Bhirama Tanu Ghanshama Nij Ayudh Bhujchari. Bhushan Banmala Nayana Vishala Shobha Sindhu Karari. Harshit Mahatari Muni Manhari. Harshit Mahatari Muni Manhari Advyut Rupa Vichari. Bhai Pragat Kripala Deen Dayala Kaushilya Hitkari. So mother, she has realized that she has gotten a blessing. As mother, she has used that authority. She has now instructed Bhagavan. This is the power of a devotee. When you're a devotee, it is because of her status of devotion that Devaki had the Vardhan from her previous life that she'll come as the mother of Bhagavan. And now she's instructed Bhagavan that I want you to come. Suni bachana sujana. Bhagavan has listened. Why? Because a devotee is speaking. Not only do I want you to come, but Rodhan Thana. That when babies are born in this world, the first thing a baby does is what? The baby cries. And if the baby doesn't cry, medical doctors, the gynecologists and whoever's there start getting worried. Oh, this baby did not cry. Is this baby okay? Because they associate crying of the baby with a perfect and a healthy baby. If a baby cries, everything's fine. The poor child is crying, we all did, because of the pain of birth. There are two most painful exercises in our life. We cannot remember them. The two most painful exercises or experiences, the pain of birth and the pain of death. So, Devaki is saying that not only do I want you to come, I want you to behave like a little child, Rodhanathana. You must cry as soon as you come, so that I can feel like a queen. Bhagavan, listen, whatever the devotee wants, that is what Bhagavan does. So yaha charita jagavahi harishita pavahi tena parahi bhavakupa. And so Bhagavan has listened to Devaki and he has decided to fulfill her promise. Her promise now is fulfilled in this final verse of Bhagavad Mahapuran in this Janm Katha that we're discussing today. Natvari pyari chal mero yashoda kola नटवारी प्यारी चाल मेरो यशोदा कोला, नटवारी प्यारी चाल मेरो यशोदा कोला, नटवारी प्यारी चाल मेरो यशोदा कोला। इत्युक्त्वा सिद्धरिस्तूष्णीं भगवानात्ममायया पित्रो समर्ष्यतो सद्यो बभुव प्रकृत शिशु। नटवारी प्यारी चाल मेरो यशोदा कोला, नटवारी प्यारी चाल मेरो यशोदा कोला। जाके लोचन रसाल मेरो यशोदा कोला, जाके लोचन रसाल मेरो यशोदा कोला। मेरो प्यारो नंदलाल, मेरो प्यारो नंदलाल, जाके लोचन रसाल मेरो यशोदा कोलाल, जाके लोचन रसाल मेरो यशोदा कोलाल। नटवारी नटवारी प्यारी चाल मेरो यशोदा कोलाल, नटवारी प्यारी चाल मेरो यशोदा कोलाल, नटवारी प्यारी चाल मेरो यशोदा कोलाल। What happened here after listening to the instructions of Devaki, then Bhagavan Sri Krishna decided that it is time, after giving her all the instructions what to do when he comes as a baby, then Bhagavan took that form away, that form of Chaturbhuj, and then he came in the form of a little baby to Devaki and Vasudeva. Vrindavan Bihari Lal Ki